Hey guys, Christy here. I just wanted to make a video about kind of something that's really personal, but also at the same time probably really relatable for a lot of people. I am just going to wing this because I just want to talk about it and not plan it out and sound all scripted or whatever. So sorry if it ends up being long, but you've been warned. But sorry, I'm looking down because I just want to, before I kind of talk about kind of my own personal experience with dieting, I just want to read something really quick from a book that changed my life called Intuitive Eating. Intuitive eating is not another diet. It's the antithesis of a diet. It's not restrictive. It's not calculated. It's not tracked. It's just eating in moderation and eating foods that you enjoy, that make you feel good. So anyways, here we go. So this is kind of just about what dieting can do to you. A dieting body is a starving body. Drastic comparison? No. While a dieting body may not look like a starving person in Ethiopia or Somalia, the symptoms from dieting exhibit a striking resemblance to the starvation state. The body does not know that there is a McDonald's on every corner as you embark on a diet. As far as the body is concerned, it is living in a famine state and adapts. So basically, dieting is just a form of starving your body of the nutrients and fuel that it needs. That might sound extreme, but like it said, our body doesn't know that we could go grab food at any time. Our body is a biological system, for lack of better words. So if you are not providing it with the nutrients or enough fuel that it needs, then it thinks that there is no food around. It thinks that you may not get to eat. It adapts by slowing down your metabolism because it needs to process things more slowly because you give it things more slowly, and by holding on to as much fat and fuel that it can, so kind of counterproductive to what most people are trying to get out of a diet. But more than that, it makes your body have intense cravings and obsession with food. Because if you diet, you've probably experienced that yo-yo effect where, Sunday or Saturday rolls around, the weekend rolls around, and a cheat meal might turn into a cheat day, or the second that you taste something with sugar, you just have to have all of it. You have one bowl of cereal and it leads to 4. That's not a lack of willpower. That's not self-control. That's just straight biology. Your body tastes that and says, oh wow, there is something available, and that it can tell that it's high calorie, high fat content, and that's what it's been restricted from. So it's like, give me all of that now because I don't know when we're going to get it again, not knowing that you could have it again in 3 hours if you wanted. But it's trained to think that after you overeat something like that you're going to go back to restricting, because most people do, if not even worse restricting than before. So that is not you failing at fighting the willpower to resist sugar. That is you not being able to fight biology, because guess what? You can't. At some point, everyone who diets is going to run into this problem, because you just can't restrict like that for life. It's going to break at some point, and then once it does, it usually turns into a habit, which is why it's called yo-yo dieting, or the diet cycle. And that's why most people spend their whole life, or way too long of their life, obsessed with food and dieting and going up and down and constantly starting over, which is just not an enjoyable way to live, and it's terrible for your body, and in fact can be worse than being overweight, going up and down and up and down. So yeah, it's not you. It is a diet that is causing your body to need or think that it needs to eat all of the food at once because it doesn't trust that it'll get it again. So until you show it that you are going to give it enough food all the time, until you have retrained your body to trust you, by not restricting for a long enough period of time, then it's going to keep happening. You might be able to withstand your biology for a couple weeks, but it usually gets shorter and shorter every time. You usually end up, maybe you do a diet for a month and then you start over. And then after that, you can only make it 3 weeks. And after that, only 2. Because it just gets harder to fight. And it becomes more of a habit as time goes on. I just wanted to share to you this really interesting study that was done, and I'll just read it. I won't describe it. It was done back in World War II, so not that recent, but it's really powerful because it applies directly to today, regardless. During the first 3 months of the study, the men ate as they pleased. They averaged 3,492 calories a day. The next 6 months was the semi-starvation period. The men were required to lose 19 to 28% of their weight depending on their body composition. Calories were cut nearly in half to an average of 1,570 a day. The effects of the semi-starvation were startling and strikingly mirrored the symptoms of chronic dieting. So they had 3,500, they were down to 1,500, and the following things occurred. Metabolism slowed down by 40%. The men became obsessed with food. They had heightened food cravings. Sound familiar? They talked about food a lot. They started collecting recipes, which is odd enough anyway, especially for a group of men, soldiers. Their eating style changed. They stalled out the eating experience. They tried to make it last longer. A lot of men just failed to adhere to it and reported episodes of bulimia. And bulimia, usually it just implies that there's some sort of purging going on. It doesn't have to mean throwing up necessarily. It can mean exercise purging, restricting. Again, they reported a complete loss of willpower. Several even stole food. They exercised more just so they could eat more food, and their personalities changed. They became irritable, moody, and depressed. So, yeah, that might have happened during World War II, but does that sound somewhat familiar? I know it does to me. I know that, before I started dieting and before I started revolving my life around weight loss, I did not have an obsession with food. I did not think about food all the time. It was just something that was in my life, and yes, I enjoyed it, but my life was not, oh, when's my next meal? Or, God, I feel terrible for eating what I ate yesterday. Like, man, I really need to lose the next 5 pounds. Like, I actually cared about other things, and dieting slowly morphs your life to revolve around it. Because it's just... It's almost hard for it not to, because you're restricting and all you can think about is food because your body is telling you to eat all the time. We just ignore it or think that we don't deserve to or are going to feel guilty, so we don't. But yeah, so that study, is crazy just to see what a normal group of men, what happened to them, pretty extreme, but at the same time, totally normal and happens all the time when you diet. So yeah, it's just really frustrating for me to see all these girls talking about how they're a failure and they don't have willpower and they can't control their diet. But it's not their fault, and it is what they're doing, what they're choosing to do diet-wise. That's the problem. They've been told that this diet will work. They've been they see other girls try it and have success. But did you follow up with them? Did you ask them 6 months later if they still had that weight off? Did you ask them how they felt while they were doing it? Because I promise you, if you did, you probably wouldn't want to do that diet. Anything that promises a quick fix, not going to work. Yeah, it might work in the week that you do it, but how many people keep that weight off? Like less than 5%. And it's even less than that when you look in the long term. Quick fixes are appealing because you want to get that weight off and you want to feel better, but how does it feel good to suffer during the time that you're doing it and then just gain it back? Because then you feel even worse because you couldn't do the diet but someone else could. Well, no, they couldn't. They had success and then they gained it back, or they just moved on to another diet that will eventually fail. What good is a life constantly dieting, constantly thinking about weight loss, putting everything else on the back burner, sacrificing social events, sacrificing, time spent with friends because you're afraid that you'll be in a situation that you'll lose control. That doesn't sound like something like the best way to live the life that we have here. And that's kind of where I was coming from when I finally hit rock bottom. Like literally my whole life revolved around food. I was binging multiple times a week, emotional breakdowns because of that all the time. And I realized that, I kept thinking that it was just because I hadn't found a diet that worked, and it was my fault. But once I finally, read, intuitive eating, break free from compulsive eating, brain over binge, the combination of these 3 books finally got through my stubborn head that thought that there was some sort of diet out there for me, and made me realize, no, there's not. The only diet out there for anyone that is successful is just giving your body what it needs, and not restricting it. And when you do that, when you eat when you're hungry, and you eat foods that make you feel good, and you don't restrict yourself, and you don't have that list of foods that is forbidden and bad, and makes you feel like crap, because the second you forbid a food, you want it more, and the second you eat it, you're going to overeat it. So the second you allow any food into your diet, and by diet I mean the way you eat, you are free from the cycle of dieting, and you can actually care about other things in life, and you will eventually bottom out at your natural weight, because your body doesn't want you to be overweight. Your body is not going to tell you that you're hungry more often than it needs to. Granted, the tough part at the beginning is, for most people, is, well, I'm hungry all the time. Well, no, you're not. You're mentally hungry a lot. And you might feel like you're hungry all the time because you're dieting, and in that case you probably are, because you're in a starvation state. But your body truly is only hungry as often as it needs to be, which is not all the time. So it becomes it becomes that point of needing to differentiate between mental hunger and physical hunger, which I'm going to do a whole nother video on, because that's the most important part, really, is being able to tell the difference between those two things. But actually, even more important than that is finally rejecting the diet mentality. Until you say to yourself, there is no diet that works. Until you say to yourself, diets do not work. I will not try another diet. I cannot afford to try another diet. I don't want to live this way anymore. Well, there is no breaking free yet. As long as you have the hope that another diet out there might work, then you can't break free from the cycle, because the next time something rolls around that sucks you in and tells you that it'll work, then you're back into it. So it truly takes a full rejection of dieting in order to stop having the yo-yo, stop having the guilt, stop having the ups and the downs, and just live your life enjoying having a good relationship with food. I know when I was at my worst, I looked at those people who just ate when they were hungry and ate what they liked, and I was like, how do they do that? That's crazy. How do they just eat in moderation? How do they just maintain a natural weight? And they do it by not dieting, and that's the short and simple answer. So yeah, I hope you could relate to this at all. If you think I sound crazy, that probably means you're not ready, and that you still have hope in diets, and that's fine, because it took me a long time. It wasn't my first video that convinced me that diets don't work. But if you at all, think that you would like to experiment with the idea of not being stuck on a dieting cycle and break free from that, I really recommend, these 3 books. In combination, they are by themselves, they are life-changing. But in combination, I would be shocked if it didn't, completely make you just break free from dieting almost instantly. Because, this one kind of talks about how to, break free from diets. This one, addresses the whole binge, yo-yo, how to, how to get past those binge urges, and short answer, it's stop dieting. but she actually gives you real solutions to try, which is great. It doesn't just say, don't do it. So that's nice. And then, this one is a great way to, a solution once you've rejected that diet mentality of how to start eating in a way that's not a diet and that's enjoyable and that gets you to your natural weight. And they're not expensive on Amazon, so I really recommend them. I hope that this helped. Please comment below if you have any questions or if you related to anything. I love hearing from you guys, and if you ever need to talk, feel free to send me a message. If you're at where I was 8 months ago, which was stuck on that cycle and binging and restricting and feeling like crap and starting over all the time, you're not alone. In fact, there are so many people who are stuck there, so you're definitely not alone, but just know that there is a way out. And if you feel right now like you are going to live that way for life, you aren't, as long as you don't want to. So I hope, again, that this helped, and stay tuned for kind of more videos on how to, transition out of that diet cycle, because it may sound impossible, but it's not. So I'm going to go now. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll look forward to, hearing anything you have to say that helped or that related to you. Bye.